Hi, I'm Bill Blain, strategist here at Shard Capital. This is one of our regular series of financial Lite-Bites where we describe something interesting that's going on in financial markets. And this week, I thought it'd be very interesting to take a look at Facebook. Now, earlier this week, we had whistleblower Frances Haugen in the papers saying she didn't want to kill Facebook but make it safer. Then she did a pretty brutal hatchet job in the firm when she gave testimony to the US Senate. She described a corporate culture at Facebook that will not change unless it is forced to do so. She blamed founder and the global business personality who is most likely to be an actual Bond villain, Mark Zuckerberg by name, accusing him of profits over people. But if you took a look in the following day's stock price action, you wouldn't know there was a problem. The market is ignoring any existential threat to Facebook. It's shrugging off any doubts. The stock even climbed yesterday. That's a day after it suffered a 6-hour unexplained platform outage, which seems to be something to do with losing the keys to their data centers. And all in all, it's about time that we were trying to figure out what is really going on in Facebook's Menlo Park corporate headquarters. Now, the whistleblower revelations expose the platforms for what Facebook has allowed them to become. And this is where I'm going to get controversial. I'm going to call Facebook's platforms digital cancer. Simply put, Facebook has become an addictive social platform in the pursuit of profits over protecting the public from the consequences of these platforms. It struck me that Facebook is very similar to the way the tobacco companies once operated. For all that the tobacco companies once told us how macho cigarettes were and that cigarettes were actually medically beneficial, we now realize that all the time they were peddling poison and lung cancer. Quite rightly, they've been closed down, although they are still functioning and selling cigarettes around the world. In many ways, the algorithmic addictions that Facebook feeds us as its money-making machine are little different from selling us tar-laden cigarettes. It was back in 1962 when the Royal College of Physicians here in the UK finally exposed the tobacco industry lie that cigarettes were good for you. It then took years for advertising bans to be enacted. Voluntary agreements with the tobacco barons proved to be absolute hollow shams. It took a further 10 years to put health warnings on packets. Even when I was young, people still thought that smoking was good for you. Lung cancer deaths have been rising for decades. It's only recently they've started to fall. And 20 years after the news that smoking was bad for you broke, players were still wearing tobacco logos at Wimbledon. I wonder how it will play out with Facebook. Are we about to close the door on the social media company? It's quite clear that the explosion in social media has opened, enabled, and encouraged targeted fake news, focusing advertising at us. It's created digital coercion and all kinds of social ills like the anxieties that now plague young women. Can we ever control Facebook and other social media platforms in ways that will not damage us? Can we control the way that conspiracy has been successfully marketed across such platforms? Can we lessen the anxieties that it's all created? I suspect that that genie is now well out of the bottle and it's not going to be back in. But, and here's the big but, and this is why it's important for markets, the market will wake up and listen. They are going to understand, investors are going to understand the dangers that social media companies represent, and eventually that the costs of them getting it wrong and not self-regulating will destroy them. Any firm that claims it's an ESG-focused investor, in other words, an investor that cares about the environment, social consequences, and good corporate governance, is going to look very carefully at firms like Facebook and conclude that they do not meet good governance and good social parameters. Therefore, they will not invest in the company. Many other investors will look at the company and say that its stock price is in danger of tumbling because it's no longer ESG compliant, and many will think that it's opening itself up to the kind of lawsuits that nearly destroyed the tobacco industry 30 years ago. Any firm advertising on Facebook is probably thinking along similar lines as well. The bottom line is we should all be having a very serious consideration about the future of Facebook now that it's being exposed for what it's created in terms of social media addictions. Anyway, that's this week's Lite-Bite. I'm sure we'll be back next week with something less miserable. Thank you very much for your time.